Cabinet Secretary to open.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This is the fourth in a series of debates focused on the challenges that Scotland faces as a result of the recent EU referendum. Following Scotland's overwhelming vote to remain within the European Union, our priority is to protect all of Scotland's interests, and we are considering all possible steps to ensure Scotland's continuing relationship with the EU. Previous debates have reaffirmed our aim of getting the best deal for Scotland in circumstances not of our choosing. Today we discuss the importance of membership of the single market for Scotland's trading relationship with the EU and the rest of the world, and how this can be best protected. So before going on to outline why being part of the single market is so important for Scotland, let me first say that I welcome this opportunity to listen to and work closely with MSPs from across the Chamber who share our goal of keeping Scotland, and indeed the whole of the UK, inside the single market, an outcome that is in the best interests of everyone in these islands. From that, you can tell my strong preference is for the whole of the UK to retain membership of the single market. However, given what we've heard from the UK Government over the last few months, we need to be prepared for the possibility that the UK Government will pursue a hard Brexit. And that's why I hope we can seize this opportunity today to work towards a unified position of support for the single market. We know that this option is favoured by Ruth Davidson, who told the BBC in July, "I want to stay in the single market, even if a consequence of that is maintaining free movement of labour." Indeed, the Conservative manifesto in 2015 said, in quotes, "We say yes to the single market." And Kezia Dugdale wrote to the First Minister in September to express her support for the Scottish Government's efforts to find a way to retain our EU membership. Now, it would be interesting to find out from the Labour benches when they speak if they maintain that position of being in support of membership of the single market, or, as their amendment suggests, whether they have now settled for what's called access. However, there has been no such clarity from the UK Government, and that's allowed those in the Tory party who favour a hard Brexit to fill the void, and the damage is already becoming clear. Earlier this month, The Times quoted a UK minister's response to rhetoric from his own colleagues on immigration. The Minister said, "It has been absolutely catastrophic in terms of the way we are now seen abroad. The impact has been devastating." So today we have the opportunity to reaffirm this Parliament's commitment to the single market and free movement, to make clear Scotland rejects the divisive language of the hard Brexiteers. I will do.
Murdo Fraser.
I'm grateful to the Cabinet Secretary for giving way. The BBC were reporting this morning that the Scottish Government's preferred option is membership of the European Economic Area. In June, the First Minister published 5 tests in relation to Scotland's relationship with the EU, one of which was that Scotland had to have a say in shaping the single market, not just being subject to its rules. But as the Law Society of Scotland have made clear, members of the EEA would be subject to EU regulations but would have no influence in deciding those. Can the Cabinet Secretary therefore confirm that membership of the EEA would be incompatible with one of the First Minister's 5 tests?
Cabinet Secretary.
I am able to confirm that just because the BBC say that's the Scottish Government's position doesn't make it so. And we have made clear all along that through the process that's been identified by the First Minister, through the Standing Council involving members from across the political spectrum and with profound knowledge of European matters, we will come to a decision in due course, and I'm sure substantially in advance of any clarity from the UK Government. But as I say, today we have the opportunity to reaffirm the Parliament's commitment to the single market as expressed previously by the Conservative Party and others. And encouraging sustainable and inclusive economic growth is at the heart of everything we do as a government. As a small, open economy in a rapidly changing and globalised world, our ability to create a more productive and fairer Scotland depends more than ever on trading with the rest of the world and on attracting investment into our economy, our businesses and our assets. And the EU is the world's largest trading bloc. It's the largest trader of manufactured goods and services in the world and ranks first in both inbound and outbound international investments. 42% of Scottish international exports go to the EU, and 8 of Scotland's top 12 export destinations are in the EU. Scottish exports to the EU were worth £11.6 billion in 2014 and were associated with over 300,000 Scottish jobs in 2011. I will do.
Neil Findlay.
Destinations. Does Scotland have a greater export field into the EU or to the rest of the UK?
The UK market is substantially larger in terms of the exports that we have than the EU currently. But it's also true to say that many of the goods that we export to the rest of the UK go on to be exported to the EU. Yeah. So it's not possible to give a definitive figure. Yes. And it's not my party's position that we should not also encourage more trade and exports with the rest of the UK. We are taking a number of measures to ensure that's true. But it surely cannot be right, as the Tory Minister, David Davis, says to the people in Ireland, that they don't have to choose between Ireland and the EU. They can have the best of both worlds. They will not have a hard border. If that is possible in the Republic of Ireland, why would it be impossible in the case of Scotland? So it does make it easier, of course, being part of the EU for the free movement of goods, services, workers and capital within the EU, without any internal borders or other regulatory obstacles. The single market removes barriers to trade with a market of over 500 million people. It also opens up opportunities for citizens, workers, businesses and consumers. It makes it easier, for example, for businesses to offer and receive cross-border services and to do business in other EU countries. Scottish businesses wishing to export to or import from the EU face no tariffs, no quotas or duties applied to the goods they trade. A common set of regulations and rules apply. In a wide range of sectors, Scottish businesses have the right to establish companies to provide services in other member states. Financial service firms based in Scotland also have the right to provide services to the EU, and EU citizens can live and work anywhere within the EU area. Membership of the single market also removes many other non-tariff barriers to trade, such as licensing and regulatory constraints, which are particularly important for services. But the benefits of being inside the single market go far beyond the imports and exports to the EU. The free movement of people has been a driver of economic growth, with access to a skilled workforce important to businesses and in attracting investment into Scotland. And inward investment into Scotland has been an area of terrific success in recent years, with EY figures consistently showing that Scotland is a top location for inward investment in the UK outside of London. Our place inside the single market is a critical factor in attracting that investment. 79% of investors citing access to the single market as a key feature of the UK's attractiveness as an investment destination in 2016. Would the Minister take an intervention? I will do.
I'd just like some explanation from the Government's motion. It says in the motion that if the UK Government will not secure that option, calls for Scotland's place in the single market to be fully protected. How does the Minister envisage protecting our position in Europe if the UK Government refuses to do so?
Cabinet Secretary.
As I just said in response to the question earlier, we will propose to the UK Government a set of proposals whereby we can maintain and protect that position. Obviously, we are undertaking a process where we're consulting with a number of people, most of whom, or many of whom, are not from the Scottish National Party. They come from other parties and no party, but have expertise in the European area and also in relation to constitutional politics as well. So we will take that advice and we will make our case to the UK Government. What is remarkable, and I'm reminded of this by Mike Rumble's question, is the front page of today's Telegraph when it says the UK Government, this is an internal leak from the Conservative Government, the UK Government has no plan. 5 months on, has no plan. Also anticipates 30,000 new civil servants having to be taken on to try and work on it. And also you have a complete split within the Conservative Party. You've got the three Brexiteers on the one side and Philip Hammond on the other side. So complete chaos. And for Murdo Fraser to issue a press release saying it's absolutely essential that the Scottish Government produces its plans, presuming that's because the UK Government has no plans and would like some guidance and some leadership from the Scottish Government. The benefits, as I've said, of being a part of the single market go far beyond imports and exports. In February, I'll address global companies based in London to promote Scottish businesses and the investment opportunities that Scotland presents, and to send the strong message, the continuing message, that Scotland is open for business. Given the importance, though, of single market membership to Scottish trade, it's not surprising to me that there's a broad consensus among economists, as actually there are actors in the economy in Scotland, that any relationship with the EU short of full membership risks increasing barriers to trade and reducing exports. The Fraser of Allender Institute has estimated that leaving the single market under a World Trade Organization scenario could result in our economy being worse off by about 5% overall. That's around £8 billion after a decade compared to the position if we remained within the EU. That's 80,000 fewer jobs and real wages lower by £200 a head per year. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to make some progress. If I have time towards the end, I'll take the intervention. So leaving the single market could mean the introduction of costly tariffs on traded goods, the loss of financial passporting and the right of establishment in other member states, new non-tariff trade barriers to trade such as divergent regulatory regimes and, of course, perhaps crucially, restrictions on the free movement of people. All this risks putting Scottish companies at a significant competitive disadvantage, and that's not a risk that we're prepared to take. And it's not just this government that understands those risks. We're hearing concerns across the economy about the impact of leaving the single market, with Scotland's main business organisations calling for continued access to the market and the free movement of labour. The Japanese government has set out in remarkable detail and with some vigour the potential implications of the UK leaving the single market: a loss of company headquarters, a hit to exports, turmoil in labour markets, damage to financial services and cuts to research and development investment. And the CEO of JP Morgan has warned that they could be forced to move jobs away from the UK to other EU financial centres if the UK is denied access to the single market's passporting regime. If Scotland was also to leave the EU customs union, businesses could face the additional burden of border checks for exports and onerous rules of origin procedures. In many cases, these are more costly than tariffs and could pose a particular risk to our time-sensitive exports like fresh food or for industries where there are complex pan-Europe supply chains such as aerospace and other high-value manufacturing. That's why the Scottish Government has been clear that we strongly support membership of the single market, and we will seek to make common cause with those of like minds across the UK to try to reach the best outcome for Scotland and the least worst outcome for the UK as a whole. And that means remaining within the single market. So we will, as I've said, table specific proposals in the coming weeks to protect Scotland's interests and to keep us in the single market, even if the rest of the UK decides to leave. It's my belief that the UK Government actually has no democratic mandate for taking the UK out of the single market, which would seriously damage Scotland's interests. And that's why I welcome the decision of the High Court in London that Article 50 could not be triggered without parliamentary approval. Because now more than ever, Scotland must be and must be seen to be a country that's confident, outward-facing and open for business. Our economic strategy recognises that strengthening our links with the global economy is key to Scotland's future economic success, and our trade and investment strategy sets out an ambitious agenda of internationalisation to support the strong performance that's seen Scotland's international exports increase by 17% over the last 5 years. And the First Minister has also recently announced a 4-point plan to build on our trade and investment strategy to boost exports and take Scotland's message to the heart of Europe, adding to the innovation and investment hubs in Dublin, Brussels and London next year. We will establish also a hub in Berlin to enhance our current presence and build on existing relationships. Secondly, to support and enhance SDI's work in helping companies win export orders and attracting investment to Scotland, we will double the number of people working for SDI in Europe. Thirdly, we will appoint dedicated trade envoys for particular markets or sectors who will help make companies in Scotland more aware of export opportunities and champion Scottish strengths and companies in key markets. Finally, we are taking forward a plan to establish a board of trade which will promote the internationalisation of Scotland's businesses and provide advice on practical ways to boost our export performance. I'll take the intervention if Dean Lockhart still wants to make it.
Dean Lockhart.
Thank you. Last week, the Irish Government made it clear that it would only deal with the UK Government as the member state in respect of Brexit negotiations. Would you not, therefore, listen to the constitutional lesson given by the Irish Government and recognise that the member state is the UK as the member state?
Cabinet Secretary.
There's some kind of element of self-loathing going on here, which says that Scotland cannot be active in the international arena, which it actively is. The Culture Secretary, Mike Russell, Alistair Allen, all very active on the international stage, talking to governments and others around the country. Interestingly, while we talk about who's talking, who's not talking, it's interesting that once again, the finance spokesperson for the Conservatives leads and puts out the press release elbowing out the way the economy spokesperson once again from discussion in this area. I'm reminded actually of the two Ronnies. I think there was an episode called The Worm Turns. There may come a point when Dean Lockhart says, Murdo, you've had enough, it's time for me to have a go, and we all look forward to that day.
Self-effacing.
Presiding Officer, to finish broadly where I began, membership of the EU single market has delivered significant economic and social benefits for Scotland. It has removed barriers to trade and opened Scotland to a market of over 500 million people. Murdo Fraser mumbles from the sidelines. He perhaps should look back at some of the comments of his His idol, Margaret Thatcher, who talked and was very instrumental in establishing the single market, who talked actually very forcefully about the necessity for freedom of people. It just shows how far to the right the Conservative Party, first of all down south and now here in Scotland, has gone. But leaving the single market, crucially, and this is important people right across Scotland, leaving the single market could increase the cost of exporting. It could reduce the country's attractiveness to overseas investors. It could lose us jobs. 80,000 is the figure mentioned by the Fraser of Allender Institute. And it could impose new restrictions on labour, increasing skill shortages and reducing productivity. Therefore, Presiding Officer, in the motion before us, I move the motion in front of us and hope that will gain the support of members across the chamber. Thank you.